All right, so we are back. The last thing that we did before, well, at the end of the last video was to add these posts in. So we got database working, we've got our form coming in, and most importantly, we've got validation happening on that form. So if I go to my post service, whoops. This might help. If I go to my posts service here, you can see here that we're calling filter var, and from last episode, filter var is a built-in PHP method that gives you validation on various types of validation and is really helpful, particularly when you're, let me turn this on as well, particularly when you're expecting data off the internet. Now, as I understand it, it doesn't cover all sorts of attacks, but it can save you from many types of attacks. So if you want to check that episode out, it's the previous one, handling post. Where we left off on that episode was in our home, we had this date time formatter function, and we're calling it down here on line 22 here. Now we don't really want a function here. What we want to do is we want to declare our behavior elsewhere and reference it into these views. So one of the first things I want to do today is to get to set up our helper layer and reference these kind of functions from our helper layer. So that's the first thing that I want to do. The second thing that I want to do is start moving towards adding security. As it stands now, like we've got data posting in, but here on line 32, the email is just hard-coded. So what we want to do is start providing people with a mechanism to log in. Now, my plan is to use Amazon Cognito to handle this, because eventually, because eventually what we're going to do is we're going to bring this whole system in and we're going to deploy it onto AWS, and we're going to use a lot of nice sort of trimmings, if you like, that AWS offer. And one of those is Cognito, which solves a number of auth problems for you. So you don't have to worry about hashing and salting passwords. You don't have to build an auth system. You just integrate with it via an API. You send user challenges to it. It lets you know if the users are valid and correct, and then it gives you a session based on those users. So very handy, very helpful, and saves us from having to implement it, and also has federated identities, so we can add in Google login and Facebook login, and that's sort of where we're heading towards with this direction. But before we do that, we need to do a little bit of cleanup in the app itself, and add that security layer. So that's what we're going to hopefully get through today, depending on how we go. I don't really know where we'll end up, but we'll have fun doing it. So yeah, as I said, the first thing I want to do is I want to set up a mechanism for this helper layer. So if I go collab, right now we've got application and core. I might just for the moment create another namespace for helpers. This probably will be changed in the future, but for today, source helpers, okay, date time helper. Let's just go date time. So what we want to do here is we want to have this declarative, so I'm going to go class date time. Namespace is collab helpers date. Wait, that's the class. Collab helpers, class date time, And then my intention is to use this as static for the moment. So if I go back to my views, let's pull this out and put it here. Oops. We can get rid of this extra tag now. Public static function. And then we'll just change this to format because the name's kind of redundant. Alright, so that should now be auto-loadable. So here, I've never done this before, but I'm guessing I can just go collab, helpers, date, time, format. Okay, we can't do that. Undefined method, set time zone. I think as soon as we introduce this into a namespace, it collab helper uncork date time zone not found. Yeah, so you gotta. Okay, cool. That looks pretty good. Now, for the moment, this helper assumes that the user is in an Australian Melbourne, but we probably don't want to do that here. So what we'll do is we'll extract that out to be a parameter of the function. And we'll put it back in the home view. So here it'll be created at can't type. Yep, there we go. So let me just fix up, make this tabbing a little bit more clearer so you can see. So collab helpers daytime format, and then Australia Melbourne. But eventually, what we'll want to do here is we will want to pull that from some user details at some point. But at this point, we don't have any kind of way of getting the current user or knowing who that is. So right now we have to leave it hard-coded, but if we refresh, everything should still work as it was before. Now, there's probably a better way to, from a usability perspective, to render that time. It's not all that digestible like that. I don't really like showing 24-hour time to end users. The date formatting is kind of weird as well. So eventually what we'll do in our helper is handle that formatting for the user. PHP locale date time formatting. So I don't know, I don't want this. So I don't know if PHP has a sort of a recognized way to load in the locale. Dot date according to locale settings. Interesting, so we can set locale. So PHP, yeah, it looks like PHP does have a mechanism to do this. String format, timestamp. Interestingly, I wonder if the PHP date time class has a way of PHP date time. So this is the actual class documentation, which is probably what we should be looking at. Okay, so you can create from format. Can we click on that? Okay, so this looks like a similar kind of deal. But so we create it from the DB time, which it understands. So that hopefully format. This is probably what we want. So we've got the object now. We format it. Given format. Format accepted by date. Right. Okay, so it basically comes back to the same format as date, which is what we were seeing before. Okay, so essentially the class is just wrapping the same functionality for the date, which is kind of handy. So I guess I guess they would have done that for compatibility reasons. Like we've already got a date format function. We're wrapping it in a class because people like classes, but we're going to use all of the same formatting, which seems a reasonable thing to do. So just looking through these, we can have a full textual representation of the month, which is quite usable. We can do a full representation of the year. So let's start playing around with a couple of these because I think they're sort of interesting. And actually that's what we've already got here. So I copied and pasted this code from another place, but it just so happens they're already using this. So if I just put Y there for year and we reload, all we get is the year. So you can see how like the date function gives us really, really fine-grained control over how we output this thing, which is really handy because dates are different depending on different people you ask, and they have different meanings and all sorts of things like that. So I like the full day as well. So let's throw in that. So lowercase l, and then I kind of think lowercase l, and then I guess we want J for the day, Sunday, then the day. I guess we can just put like hyphens. So we're in Australia here. So for now, I'm just going to set it up for Australia. And in Australia, we write the day, the month, then the year, rather than in North America where you guys write the month and then the day. So let's set it up like that, but eventually this will be customizable. So our North American friends will see a date that they're accustomed to, and Australian people and English people will see a date they're accustomed to. And then anyone else from any other locale will be able to configure it for their needs. So what I want is the day, which I've got, the date, the day, and then maybe this little short text, which is a capital M. And then the year like that. So let's have a look at that and see if that makes sense. Sunday, 22nd of March, 2020. To me, that's quite concise, and that's the kind of date that I want to see. let's go full F for full. Cool. So yeah, I like that. Eventually what we'll do is we'll get some styling happening here so the text doesn't look as difficult to read as what it is now. But for now I'm happy with that. Someone at somewhere on Sunday the 22nd of March, Sunday the 22nd of March 2020. So interestingly, this is getting posted at the wrong time because currently my dates are going in as UTC and they're coming out as UTC plus 10. So yeah, we'll have to fix that as well. But essentially, we've got now a helper that will format our date consistently wherever we are in the app. So I'm happy with that for the moment. What I'm really keen to move on to is the security stuff. So if we go to our context, which is in the application, nope, it's in core. I've already stubbed out a little bit of security. So context, this creates the new router. So we'll probably actually put it in router. Yeah, so this will execute the route. And I believe this is what index is calling. Yeah, router execute. So what we probably want here is the security to run before the route gets executed. And we probably want to have some sort of globally accessible security object, I'm guessing. Now, I already took a crack at this. No security. And I've set up an iSecurity interface. So that's... I might have actually... Have I deleted this? I think I might have. Collab core iSecurity. Core... Yeah, I have. Okay, so I lied. I don't have an I don't have a security interface, but we can easily create one. But before we even do that, we've got to decide kind of what the security layer looks like. We've also got a security context as well. So basically the way I'm picturing this working is we have a request come in. It should ask the security layer, is this request valid? Like, can we continue? The security layer at that point will return a Boolean for true or false. If it returns true, it will also make available the security context. And the security context is the data bag that will hold all of the user details. So the security layer will go off, do the auth, do what it needs to do, and then return back a security context. And that's what the downstream components in our application will introspect when they need information about the current user. So it'll all come from that security context. So if you look at our security layer initially, it's not doing a whole lot. And it's just returning this blank security context object, which actually doesn't exist right now. So what I want to do, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to restore our interface, because we want to have an iSecurity interface, because what I'm going to do first is build this no-op security layer, and what the no-op security layer will do is it will just make up a user for us. Now, the reason we want the no-op security layer initially is because we won't have any of the integrations set up with Cognito. And we don't want to do that yet, but we do want our application to respect our security layer. So we're going to deliver this no-op security layer. We're going to re-implement our iSecurity interface, and then after we set up Cognito, what we're going to do is we're going to build a Cognito class, a Cognito security class that implements the iSecurity interface and does the security for real. Now, the reason why we have two different classes for security is development ease. We probably don't want to have to use Cognito in development. We might, but it would be a lot easier not to worry about the security layer in development. The other thing that this will really help with is testing. We don't want our test suite to have to go off to Cognito every time and authenticate our users when we're, say, unit testing. We just want the tests to work. And we want the test to focus on what we're trying to test rather than being concerned with, okay, so now I've got to go off to Cognito and verify this token and blah, 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 blah. So that all, to me, is way too hard. So yeah, what we're going to focus on is getting this no-op security working. But more importantly, what we're going to do is we're going to build the mechanisms into our app so that the rest of our application understands the iSecurity interface, but doesn't really have any idea of the underlying implementation. And that is where dependency injection really, really shines. That is where it really comes into its own, doing things like this. So given that we've got this and we've got a fairly well-defined interface, let's create that now. So core security.php. Let's do our little PHP thingy. And we're going to go interface, iSecurity, and then we're going to grab the signatures of these two methods here. Looks good to me. Validate. This is a Boolean. I think that's how you specify return types in an interface correctly. And security context. And we're going to use collab core security context. Like that. I don't think you actually have to specify public on an interface. It doesn't really make sense because everything by definition is public. iSecurity, collab core, we haven't added the namespace, that will cause issues. Looks good. So populate the security context. The other thing we need is a security context core. There's potentially an argument to have this as an interface as well, but I'm not going to bother for the moment because I just want to make this class really, really generic and simple. So rather than worry about extracting the exact interface out, I'm just going to define a class here. And I'm just gonna, I guess we can have like a public function get username. Let's just say get email for now, get email. And then get display name, possibly. These are things we actually need right now. Actually, probably these are the only two things, because we'll need the display name to show who the post's from, and we'll need the username to... Sorry, we'll need the display name to show who the post's from, and we'll need the email address to post to the database. Because if you remember from last episode, our posts table is actually keyed by email address. That's the foreign key. So we'll need at minimum both of those, but I don't think I need much more than that. So return this display name. Return this email. Email rather. And then we want to private string display name. Display name. And private string email, like that. And then we also want a function construct that, and then we want to initialize string email string display name, and then set the two local variables. This email equals email. Don't forget the $, we're using PHP, and display name. Okay, so the nice thing about this is our security layer up here, whatever it's doing, whatever our implementation is doing, like if it does a bunch of stuff here, maybe from Cognito, maybe from the database, we can still publish whatever it is, whatever important information to the security context object. So in this case, if I say, email is, actually let's cheat and just use what we had in that view. Whoops, no, right. Okay, let me write that. So I'm just going back to that view I had open before, if I can find it. Views, home, index. So here I've got this email address. Now this is an email address that I know is already set up in my database. So for now, we're gonna hard code things because we know it works, and because, again, like I said, it's not so much about who the user is or whether even our implementation works. It's just about getting the abstractions right at this point. That's the most important thing. So email is that, and then the display name. We'll just set that to yours truly. Right. Yeah, so that looks pretty good for now. Interestingly, I think what we potentially would want to do here, we'll need to extract out some sort of token or some sort of session value. Like probably would write it in the cookie, I guess, because we're doing things with no JavaScript or any other programs. But I would say that the iSecurity interface is not quite complete. I'd say that there'll be some form of data injection here, or there'll be some sort of input like a token or a cookie or a session ID or something like that that we'll need to use. Now, how that fits into things, I'm not quite sure. Given the way that we've got if I go public index, I'm guessing that in our router execute, we would pass in some sort of like session ID, and then we could potentially read this from the cookie, maybe. That's probably how we would do that. But again, one of the nice things about design by interface is we don't have to really worry about that problem right now. All right, so public function validate. We always validate. We always return the same security context object defined by the fact that the email and display name are hard-coded. Again, in our future interface, we'll probably construct the security context once and then have it as a member of whatever security implementation we end up with, and then return that, so we don't have to keep reconstructing the same object, which would be a little wasteful. But from a downstream component perspective, that doesn't really matter at this point. All right, so security context collab core, that's good. I'm happy with that. That's good too. So really the only thing left is how this fits into the router, because that's currently the code that is handling the execution. So here we probably want to test for security somehow. And what we really would want to do is construct that security in the context. So this is where everything gets constructed. Host service, user service. So we probably do it after the database connection. Let's do it after the database connection for now. Okay, security equals new. So our no so yeah, our current interface is called no-op security. That's short for no operation, so it doesn't do anything. So security new no-op security, and that's all we need. And then in our router, we want to pass in our security layer here. So let's just put it all nice and neat here. We probably don't need to register the component just yet, but I'd say we will in the future. In fact, do you know what? No, we definitely will. So let's register our component as well. Security, and then security like that. Okay, so no security, register component security, and then we pass it into our router. And then our router here, in its function construct, this will expect a security object of type iSecurity, security, and then here we'll do the old initialization pattern. This security equals security like that, and then private iSecurity security, and then we want to use collab. Whoops, collab core. Can't type today. iSecurity like that. Right. So yeah, we inject a specific implementation in our context, and in the actual router, we just deal with the interface. So at this point, our router really doesn't care what the security logic is, which is good, which is exactly what we want. So now, if I go back to the security, our no-op security, let's have a look at the methods we've got here. So public function validate, public function get context. So here, what we want to do is we want to say this security validate like that. Just wondering if we should get the interface as complete as it should be, I wonder. No, let's hold off. Let's hold off doing that. We'll leave it like this for now, and then in the next episode when we start integrating with Cognito, all of that stuff will become a lot more apparent. So security validate. So what we want to do, what we actually want to do, is wrap this in an if statement. What is that? And then we want to say if it doesn't validate, throw new security exception. Yeah, that seems fine for now. Security exception. And then, the other thing we want to do here is to set the header. PHP set return header. Can never remember how to do this because it's kind of weird in PHP. Location 404 not found. Okay, so this is what we want here. We have to set the HTTP value version for some reason. And then we want to set 401, and let me just look up the specific 401 HTTP status code. 401 unauthorized, authorized being spelled with a Z, which always messes me up. Yep. Alright, so, and exit, obviously. Or I think it's die. I think the preferred, is the preferred die or is it exit? PHP die. Die. Intense. This language construct is equivalent to exit. And terminate the current script. Okay. It is poor design to rely on die for error handling in a website because it results in an ugly experience for site users, broken page, and if they're lucky. Always design it to handle errors in a way that will allow them to continue using it if possible. Not possible. Site really is broken. If a supermarket... Nice job, Haley Watson. Oh, I love that analogy. Okay, so it's a good point. It's actually a very good point. Yeah, alright, well, easy way to get around that. Just do that, I suppose. Probably want to set that first. I guess because we're throwing the exception, we can handle it upstream, which we eventually might do. I mean, maybe, do you know what? It might not even be the right place to handle the header there. Screw it. Let's just let the thing bubble up. We can worry about headers later. Alright, let's see what happens. Okay, so declaration of collab core no security validate must be compatible. Validate. Is it because I haven't specified a boolean here? Must be an instance. I keep forgetting that PHP uses bool, and I think I've got this in the interface as well. No, not that one. Yeah, I like that. Alrighty, cool. So that should be working. So now let's bring the trap. Let's go back to our no-op security class, no-op security. And let's return false here. So this is if the validation doesn't work and we get an uncaught security exception. Okay, so interestingly, now that I'm seeing that here, it's kind of become a lot clearer, because the way we should be doing this is here. So what we actually want to do is put this in a try catch. Probably put all of this in a try catch. And CATCH. And then we want to do it from here. So PHP try catch. Yeah, and then we catch the particular exceptions from here. So we would catch, if we go back to our router, we would catch our security exception here. Now, I think I'm gonna have to move those into their own files for the autoloader to work, but catch collab, let's see, collab call security exception E, and then at this point we want to go header. I have to look up the thing again. No. Copy, shift insert. Why aren't you working? Welcome to a video of a man who can't copy and paste. Copy, shift insert. Why isn't that working? Copy. Amazing. It's not even the right header. So it'll be a 401. And let me just make sure I'm getting the American spelling right. Unauthorized with a Z. I'm getting deja vu. Alright, so grab that. Let's see if that copy works this time. Nope. Yes, cool. I can copy and paste. That one. Alright, so yeah, if we catch this security exception, we just throw an unauthorized, and like Haley Watson said, we don't necessarily need to die, but I know that this is the end of my script anyway. Interestingly, another kind of cool thing we can do here is we can say route not found, and then here we can throw a 404. 404 not found, like that. And I guess moving forward, we should. This is the one place where we should manage all of these. Now, I don't think this is going to work because, as I understand it, autoload won't autoload more than one class in a file. So I'm expecting I can't find these exceptions. Actually, that may have worked. Inspect. Cons network. Okay, so beautiful. We're getting a 401 unauthorized. That's what we want, because we've got our no op security. Let's change it to true. Refresh, and we get a 200. Beautiful. So let's try our route, and then we get our 404. So yeah, you can do it that way. That's really nice. PHP wins again. Yeah, so I actually I didn't even realize we would have gotten this pattern at the start of the video, but I actually really like this. So this is cool. All right, so given we've got all that, let's do one more thing and then call it a wrap. We're up to 44 minutes. This is a long video. My video is probably too long as it stands now. So the last thing I want to do here is use this security context in one of my views, because this is where we need it. So what I'll do is I'll go to views, home index, and what we'll do is we'll go security context, and we'll go get context. I think this is just called security get context, like that. And then we've got email and display name. So what we want to do here is go into here, and we'll use the PHP short tag, and then we say security context get email. That'll return our email. I don't know if I need a termination there. I don't think I do, actually. Someone correct me if I do. And then in the post, we've got aha. We can't do user. I was hoping to actually get the display name right here, but I can't, so that's okay. So we'll have to leave that as post user email, but eventually we'll use display name. What we can do though, now that we have our security context, we can go into our header.php, and we should be able to use our security context here as we did before, and we can do a trick here to display the username, which is a nice little feature. Security context get display name. Again, I don't think I need this. Okay, let's try that. We're still we're the wrong route. Okay, so there's our display name. Fantastic. So we have security. It's a silly security layer that doesn't really do anything, but we have the abstraction. And really, that's the hardest thing to do out of all of this. So given where we're at now, everything is ready for more views. More helpers. We've got our helper abstraction done. And we are now ready to start on our journey with Amazon Cognito. And we'll start setting this up. We'll start setting federated identities up. And then at that point, I'm going to introduce the next phase of this video series, which is going to take more of a business-centric approach, I suppose you would say, and how we would start to measure our users and how we would start to use data layers to inform the next decisions on features that we build. Anyway, for now, it's goodbye. Please feel free to leave comments in the comments section because I read all of those. And thank you guys very much for watching.